Former President Donald Trump has promised that he would end the war between Russia and the Ukraine before he even steps foot in the White House. Now, this is a huge promise, but one that has the interest of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Talks of a ceasefire have been rejected by NATO, even though Putin is the one who suggested it. Now, if you guys remember, there were supposed to be peace talks early into this conflict. One that was rejected because the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson pressured Ukraine into continuing the fight, which urged Zelensky to say no to peace and to keep the war dragging on. This was confirmed by David Arahamiya, the leader of Ukraine's ruling party. But now it looks like there's a second chance in the horizon, one that, as I said, is being introduced by Donald Trump. So Trump is looking to take the White House this coming November. And while many people believe that he's a shoo-in at this point, ending the Russia-Ukraine war would most probably secure his position even more. President Biden, on the other hand, has argued that the war should not be ended. And I feel as if he's let the cat out of the bag here, as it sounds as if he said the quiet part out loud. So here's a snippet from Donald Trump and Biden's recent debate.
Are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then do you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Did President Biden just admit that this war is funding weapons contractors here at home? So all this money that we've been sending to the Ukraine is essentially being laundered back to defense contractors that create these weapons? Now, I'm not really sure if the president should have said that out loud or not, but hey, he did. Now, let's get back to what Donald Trump is suggesting here. He says that he can end this war before he's elected as president. Now, that's a pretty bold claim, although it's one that's rare because we have yet to hear President Biden talk about peace when it comes to Ukraine. What's surprising is that Vladimir Putin has responded to Donald Trump's words directly. In a recent speaking engagement, Putin said that in general, the war is impossible to turn away from, citing that the United States is still a great power with known capabilities. He talked about our strengths in terms of our military, security, and our economy, reminding everyone that the United States has an influence as to what happens in Ukraine. He then talked about Donald Trump, a presidential candidate who said that peace is on the table and that the war in the Ukraine can be stopped. He took these words very seriously. This is despite him knowing what proposals Donald Trump might have for him and the Ukraine. But here's the actual bombshell here, guys. Even though Putin isn't sure about what Trump's plan is, he says that he sees sincerity in the former president and that they support his plan for peace.
В целом, конечно, я видел, что же отворачиваться от этого невозможно, тем более, что Соединенные Штаты остаются великой державой с известными возможностями в сфере экономики, безопасности, в сфере военного дела, и США член Совета Безопасности постоянный, конечно, такое влияние имеет на ситуацию на Украине. Конечно, не безразлично, что там происходит, но это их, собственно, внутреннее дело. Вы знаете, то, что господин Трамп, как кандидат в президенты, заявляет о том, что он готов и хочет остановить войну на Украине, мы к этому относимся вполне серьезно. Я не знаком, разумеется, с его возможными предложениями по поводу того, как он собирается это сделать. И это, конечно, ключевой вопрос. Но я не сомневаюсь, что он говорит это искренне, и мы это поддерживаем.
Now, how insane is that? But of course, this will be spun by mainstream media as a form of endorsement from Putin, even though he's already said earlier this year that he would prefer President Biden, as he's predictable. However, you just can't forget the fact that there are two sides to this war. So what does Ukraine have to say about this, right? Well, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, he's challenging Trump to tell him his plan. So how does Trump actually plan to achieve peace at this point? Zelensky called out the former president and said that if he knows how to end this war, he should let him know immediately. In the same interview, Zelensky was also quoted in saying that they're potentially ready to meet with Donald Trump to hear his proposal. However, there is a catch. Trump has already stated that he can't act on this by telling everybody about it. Now, some critics argue that this is just a ploy from the former president to kind of garner votes. But seeing as both Putin and Zelensky are taking him seriously, there's probably something deeper behind all this stuff here. The belief is that both parties are already aware of Donald Trump's plan, but it's a plan that would only work if Donald Trump was president. Now, despite this, Zelensky has argued that his country needs more resources, saying that they need these tools to arrive as soon as possible so that they can defend themselves. Now, obviously, this might be a call to President Joe Biden to continue to send over more weapons and more funding to Ukraine, even though the United States, through President Joe Biden, has just announced a new $2.3 billion military aid package for their war. This was announced by Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, saying that we will be sending air defense interceptors and critical munitions. The Pentagon has also confirmed that the Biden administration plans to accelerate delivery of these munitions by resequencing upcoming foreign military sales deliveries for Ukraine.
And I am proud that the United States will soon announce more than $2.3 billion in new security assistance for Ukraine. This package, under presidential drawdown authority, will provide more air defense interceptors, anti-tank weapons, and other critical munitions from U.S. inventories. It will also enable the United States to procure more Patriot NASAMS, air defense interceptors, which will be provided on an accelerated timeline by the resequencing of deliveries for some foreign military sales.
So it's pretty clear that President Joe Biden is all in when it comes to backing this war. And it's also why many are now considering voting for Donald Trump, as he is the only person in the room who's talking about peace, some of which consider themselves to be Democrats. But what do you guys think? Should we trust the former president to end this war? Or should we follow what the Biden administration has been doing and just pour more money into weapons and keep this war going? Speaking of which, I did a previous video where I discussed the possibility of someone else pulling the strings on Biden's reelection, meaning that someone else is pushing the president to do this and that he's no longer mentally fit to even make decisions for himself. Make sure you guys check that video out right after this one. But as always, I want to thank y'all so much for your support. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing to the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.